Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, 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 Spirit draw near.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I am your minister, the Reverend Darcy, and it is a joy to be with you virtually today. So who are we as Community Church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are in a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. And so each week, y'all will see the announcements that come before our service. Also on Thursdays, we have an announcement that goes out that gives links and info for all that is happening in the past, present, and future. Well, not everything, but in regards to our church. So please take a look at that. I just want to lift up a few things. One is that on Monday, there are several events as part of the interfaith community that y'all are welcome to. There is an LGBTQ Seder that is hosted by Temple Sinai. The info is in the announcements, or you can look it up online. I will be attending virtually. It is very exciting. There is also going to be a talk about Ramadan, which should be really fantastic as well. Please look in your announcements for that as well if you are interested. There is a plethora of holidays around this time, as we know. One announcement that was not able to get into the announcements this week is our Hogwarts Camp 2021. It's going to be the Academy of Advanced Outdoor Arts. Many folks who live in New Orleans know of the beauty of Hogwarts Camp, which is often at First Unitarian Universalist. This year, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be in the Irish Channel, an in-person camp Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 1 p.m. with a virtual session via Zoom each day from 2 to 3 p.m. The reason I'm letting y'all folks know about it now is that early registration for Greater New Orleans UU families is available until March 31st. And then April 1st, they open it up to the whole community. I know a lot of people love this camp. It's really special. So if you can email Colleen at hogwartscampnola@gmail.com. The info is also going to be in your chat box. By March 31st, you will be able to get a spot for your fantastic kids in a fantastic camp. So with that, I'd like to do an opening words today before our chalice lighting. So our service today is going to call us to deeper attention to ourselves, to others, and to life's journeys. So I turn to French philosopher, political activist, and mystic Simone Weil in her work, Gravity and Grace, to bring us to attention. Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Attention, taken to its highest degree, is the same thing as prayer. It presupposes faith and love. Absolutely unmixed attention is prayer. If we turn our mind toward the good, it is impossible that little by little, the whole soul will not be attracted thereto in spite of itself. Thank you for your attention, and we begin our worship in earnest.
We light this flame to affirm the light of truth and knowledge, the warmth of love and community, and the fire of hope and commitment.
Good morning, everybody. I have a little poem for you today. It's called Sea Fever by John Maysfield. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels' kicks and the wind's song and the white sails shaking, and a gray mist of sea's face and a gray dawn breaking. I must down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call they may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying and the flung spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. I must down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, and to the gull's way and the whale's way, with the winds like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yawn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trip's over. Thank you.
Our first reading is about the Jewish holiday of Passover, which commemorates the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. Puerto Rican Jewish poet Aurora Levines Morales writes, "This Passover, who reclines? Only the dead, their cupped hands filling slowly with the red wine of war. We are not free. The blood on the doorpost does not protect anyone. They say that that country over there, dim blue in the twilight, farther than the orange stars exploding over our roofs, is called peace. The bread of affliction snaps in our hands like bones, is dust in our mouths. The bitterness brings tears to our eyes. The figs and apples are sour. We have many more than 4 questions. We dip and dip, salt stinging our fingers. Unbearable grief braided into a rope so tight we can hardly breathe. Whether we bless or curse, this is our captivity. We would cross the water if we knew how. Everyone blames everyone else for barring the way. Listen. They say there is honey swelling in golden combs over there. Dates as sweet and brown as lovers' cheekbones. Bread as fragrant as rest. But the turbulent water will not part for us. We've lost the trick of it. Back then, one man's faith opened the way. He stepped in, we were released, our enemies drowned. This time, we're tied at the ankles. We cannot cross until we carry each other. All of us refugees, all of us prophets. No more taking turn on history's wheel, trying to collect old debts no one can pay. The sea will not open that way. This time, that country is what we promise each other. Our rage pressed cheek to cheek, until tears flood the space between, until there are no enemies left, because this time, no one will be left to drown, and all of us must be chosen. This time, it's all of us or none. As we do each week in our service, we now move into our sacred time of joys and sorrows. And so I ask each of you to consider the joys that have happened for you this week and lift them up so that we may celebrate with you, even virtually, in community. And also, please, as you are able, know this is a space to share your deepest sorrows, that we grieve with you, we care for you, and we love you. And so as we listen to Immortal Love, please write your joys and sorrows in the Zoom chat box. And after this musical moment, we will read them aloud and light our candles. Thank you so very much for sharing your joys and your sorrows in our time together today. Our wonderful CCU member, Sally Jackson, will be lighting our candles. Lizzie and Annabelle K. write, I am joyful that I am vaccinated and soon all adults here will have access. Absolutely. Monday, March 29th opens to everyone in Louisiana over 16. Also mixed feelings about starting PT for carpal tunnel to try to prevent surgery. Sending you so much love and healing thoughts and support and care. Kathy Larimer writes, it was a joy that my 2 fully vaccinated sisters were able to visit here for the first time in well over a year. That is joyful indeed. Happy birthday to Laura Carmen, writes Al Malone. Happy, happy birthday, Laura. Jada writes that she's joyful that I and my household are fully vaccinated. We are delighted. Amy writes to thank you music ministry for the gorgeous music this morning. Also, thank you to my pandemic pound puppy. We adopted her a year ago and she has been our joy, our distraction, and our steadfast friend ever since. Yes, lifting up the incredible work of our music ministry and also lifting up all of our companions in our lives that bring us love and meaning and sometimes headaches, but in the best way. Sending love out to you all for that. There is a lot of joy around continuing vaccination. I also want to lift up a sorrow. It was just last week that I was lifting up the continuing sorrow of the shootings in Atlanta. I would like to also light a candle of sorrow for those who died in the shootings in Boulder. May we eventually find our compassionate hearts and be emboldened to have, in particular, some more gun laws that make more sense. With that, I also want to light another candle because we always talk about not partisan, but political. So these are our civic mind, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about this in the service as well. As a religious community devoted to the democratic process, I want to lift up a candle of sorrow for the bill that passed in Georgia to restrict voting rights. Many are calling it so much so like the new Jim Crow. However, I also want to light a candle of hope and endurance because there are people, including us UUs, who are standing up and pushing back. We'll have some ways that we can get involved later in the sermon, in the chat box. But let us continue on. I know we're tired, but also this is the work, our faithful work of a lifetime. So I light this candle too for our continuing sacred work and also all the joys that we don't yet have words for or form for. May you know that we celebrate your joys. And finally, all the sorrows that seem just too heavy at this time to carry. Know that we are with you and that we love you. Amen.
Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends' generosity help us to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccuunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659. Text GIVE. You can also send a check to CCUU at 6690 Fleur de Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana 70124. Check the chat box for ways to give. We thank you.
storm, the wonder of the wind and crashing sea, nature in power and might and majesty, yet wonder more in deep tranquility, sea calm and still. Migrating birds, in thoughts intent upon the distant shore, great wonder hold, yet there is wonder more. When lonely eagle watched for untold, sits calm and still. All people one, in urgent haste on some great enterprise, hearts beating fast, great dreams to realize. Yet in the soul a dream of richer prize, serene and still. Then striving cease, from trouble turmoil seek an inward goal. Tranquility shall make the spirit whole. Be still and know a presence in the soul, serene, alive.
Our second reading for today is by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. from his pilgrimage to nonviolence. When I was in Montgomery, Alabama as a pastor in 1954, I had not the slightest idea that I would later become involved in a crisis in which nonviolent resistance would be applicable. After I had lived in the community about a year, the bus boycott began. The people of Montgomery, exhausted by the humiliating experiences that they constantly faced on the buses, expressed a massive act of non-cooperation in their determination to be free. They came to see that it was ultimately more honorable to walk the streets in dignity than to ride the buses in humiliation. At the beginning of the protest, the people called on me to serve as their spokesman. In accepting this responsibility, my mind, consciously or unconsciously, was driven back to the Sermon on the Mount and the Gandhian method of nonviolent resistance. This principle became the guiding light of our movement. Christ furnished the spirit and motivation, and Gandhi furnished the method. The experience in Montgomery did more to clarify my thinking in regard to the question of nonviolence than all the books that I had read. As the days unfolded, I became more and more convinced of the power of nonviolence. Nonviolence became more than a method to which I gave intellectual assent. It became a commitment to a way of life. Many issues I had not cleared up intellectually concerning nonviolence were now resolved within the sphere of practical action. Our final reading today is from author, educator, and activist Parker Palmer. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you have decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody, what values you represent. So when my 6-year-old son Sebastian grows up, he plans on being an artist, a spy, an athlete, preferably a break dancer, and an engineer. That is a pretty full professional life. And in this, he takes after his mother. Around his age, I planned on being a soccer player, a lawyer, a painter, and a pilot. A minister was never on that list. Yet from an early age, I was the kid who went door to door with my Help the Homeless cup. The kid with non-church-going parents who would breathlessly tell you biblical tales of Moses, Elijah, and Sarah. The kid starting a grammar school's recycling program and failing to rally a school administration to allow uniform pants for girls. I look back and realize that what I gave my attention to, not what I thought I should give my attention to, was what led me here. It took a while, but eventually I listened, as Parker Palmer counseled, to what my life intended for me. Because our intentions are our aims and plans for our lives, professionally and personally. And if we were our life's cartographers, the sole creators of our life's map, we might have all these beautiful, clean lines converge into our island of perfect bliss. X marks the spot. Then we'd stay there, having sliced a path to the happy ending we created. But as Palmer tells us, before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Because our intentions are often in tension with reality. The reality of the world around us, the reality of ourselves. In the Jewish tradition, this week marks Passover, a remembrance of when Moses led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. This was not a role that Moses had planned for. Raised by an Egyptian pharaoh's daughter, the intention for Moses' life was one of comfort and luxury. And yet, through God's command and what caught Moses' attention, the justices inflicted on the Jewish community, Moses then eventually led and liberated his people. So for Moses, even in the desert where this story unfolds, life had a way of shipwrecking the best or ideal intentions. So what intentions for your life have been altered or thrown out completely, particularly in this pandemic year? Or perhaps, actually more to the point, where has your attention turned? Amidst the monotony and difficulty of these times, what has brought you life and meaning? And how might you better steer your ship of attention toward that port? Because our choice as moral cartographers is to either stay where we are, whether adrift on debris or on a comfortable island, or to chart our courses anew. Steer our ship toward our true north, our authentic center. Even Reverend Dr. King, an icon whose history might have us believe emerged in this world fully formed, had his own evolution. As Dr. King discussed in our reading today, Pilgrimage to Nonviolence, it was an evolution that was not realized simply through his cradle Baptist faith, nor was it realized through his study of religion and philosophy, from neoliberalism to existentialism. No. Reverend Dr. King's ship's course of firm and fierce nonviolent ministry became clear in paying attention to the organizers of the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. In recognizing their nonviolent commitment, Dr. King realigned his moral compass to a newly configured map of his life. Dr. King's life could have taken a great many turns, from scholar to politician. But the actions in Montgomery set him on a course that continued until the day he was murdered, supporting striking sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. Now you say, I am no Reverend Dr. King. No, none of us are. But Reverend Dr. King didn't know he was going to be Reverend Dr. King until life or God or however you call it intended to do something with his courage and his brilliance. Reverend Dr. King was keen enough to follow that higher intention. The path that was chosen for Dr. King and that he chose to follow was not paved with gold or longevity, but it was clear. It was true. When that intention, that horizon opened up for him to follow, he paid attention. He charted his course. But us, we may need a little help with our directions sometimes. So I'll tell you, when I first moved to New Orleans, the Crescent City turned my normally acute navigation on its head. Street pronunciations made no sense. Burgundy, Chapatoulas. Merge lanes were a vehicular gladiator ring, and my family even lost a car to a flash flood. But slowly, over time, I learned. Where potholes were deepest, or if I get caught in the middle of a street parade, I should enjoy myself because I'm not moving anytime soon. That took attention to the city surrounding me. And even now, this attention won't always shield me from a flat tire. Attention in our spiritual lives means being attuned to our inner world and perspectives different than our own, even when this attunement can be painful. The original Passover story is brutal. When the Pharaoh will not free the Jewish people from bondage, will not let my people go, as Moses demands, the Egyptians are victim to 10 horrific plagues, culminating in the death of the firstborn son. When the Jewish people escape from Egypt, the Red Sea drowns the Egyptians pursuing them. In the ritual Passover meals called Seders, those at the table give their attention to the tragedy of this price of liberation. And at many Seder tables, there is a deep and resounding commitment to move toward a justice and equity that calls not for death, but instead life and liberation for all. This call is most beautifully summed up by Puerto Rican Jewish poet Aurora Lavigne Morales, as she wrote of the evolution of Passover and the crossing of the Red Sea. We cannot cross until we carry each other, all of us refugees, all of us prophets, because this time, no one will be left to drown. And all of us must be chosen. This time, it's all of us or none. As Unitarian Universalists devoted to inclusiveness and care, we would do well to heed the prophetic words of the Jewish tradition. How might we give our time and attention in such a way that we are all liberated? From the sacred work of Black Lives Matter to showing radical hospitality to undocumented people. This sacred work is not easy. It may open wounds. I once floated in the Red Sea between Israel and Jordan. Just a few days before that, I had suffered a huge gash in my arm, the result of a waitressing mishap involving an ice machine. The water was beautiful, and I was thousands of miles away from my waitressing job in New York City. But my arm burned. The high saline content of the water pierced my injured skin. However, almost miraculously. In just a few hours, this huge gash began to heal so quickly. Healing can be painful too. From anti-racism conversations to gun control debates, we will, as a country, continue to feel that burning. But if we stay in conversation, stay with the discomfort or pain, if we can bring our full attention to ourselves and our country's blind spots, we can navigate our moral compass. We can heal. And before we debate the policy implications of open borders or fears of cancel culture, let us first turn our mind toward the good, as Simone Weil writes. Let us look toward love and liberation, where all of us are chosen. With this attention, in small ways each day, perhaps we may actually start becoming more loving and more just. We may begin to turn toward our true north and eventually invite others with us on this journey. And listen, this slow and deliberate work, filled with attention, will not be as immediate as we desire. And in doing this work, we are often not the heroes we imagine. A meme I recently saw speaks to this. In Coronavirus Apocalypse Outfits, Expectations versus Reality, we get some glimpses of what we thought we might look like during this pandemic apocalypse versus the reality. Now, joking aside, here is the reality. Taken by Henry Carter Bression in 1961, this is a picture of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at his desk, exhaustedly poring over papers. I like this picture, like I like all candid pictures of Dr. King, because beyond the holidays, the vaunted status, the black and white footage of rousing speeches, Dr. King was a man trying to follow his true north. And as you can see, he was human. He was tired. Yet he kept on, in moments exhilarating, in moments exhausting, fortified by purpose and faith. Again, we may not be leaders like Reverend Dr. King, but each day we can pay attention to what life intends to do with us. And with that knowledge, with this church community, we can become better moral cartographers through sacred work, living ever more deeply into our UU values of justice, equity, love. Or we can choose to chart a course of ignorance, comfort, and complacency. Many of us Unitarian Universalists pledged, volunteered, and marched to ensure our democratic process remained intact in the November 2020 election. And we made an impact. But the tide doesn't stop turning just because we moved our boat forward. Conservative state houses across the country at this very moment are attempting to enact laws limiting folks' legal, constitutionally protected right to vote. Our horizon has moved, and we must follow it. I urge you all to continue. Check in with Fair Fight in Georgia and the Power Coalition and Together Louisiana in our state. The links are in the chat box. On the national level, let us fiercely support the For the People Act, which would make it easier to vote, enact new campaign finance laws, and end partisan gerrymandering of congressional districts. Because this time, in this democracy, it's all of us or none. We may not get to be some glamorous hero in this long, exhausting, and essential work, but we may come through this time together. A few years ago, my family and I visited the Civil Rights Museum housed at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, where Dr. King was assassinated. As you reach the culmination of the museum, the hotel room where Dr. King spent his last few moments, there was a video of the speech he gave at Bishop Charles Mason Temple the night before he was murdered. In his speech, Dr. King conjures up the image of Moses in the Hebrew Bible, who led his people out of Egypt during this time of Passover. Many years later, Moses, on top of Mount Nebo, sees the promised land where his people will finally settle. Moses knows that he will die before they reach it. So as Dr. King preached in a parallel to his own life, well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter to me now because I've been to the mountaintop. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. After the video, visitors enter Dr. King's hotel room, kept in its original state, complete with the 1960s decor, food and coffee cups strewn around. A lived-in room of a man grown used to traveling for justice. And I think about him sitting there and all the things to do, movements to lead, a family to call before bedtime, courses to chart, all the while moving toward his life's horizon. But it was a horizon that even death could not stop. Dr. King's intention shaped not only his life, but ours and our children's, and God willing, our children's children. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s voice and clarity resounds over time, far more clearly than the thud of an assassin's bullet. We do not have the voice of Dr. King, and hopefully we'll never have to pay such a devastating price for our voice. But we do have words to speak and work to do, even in the smallest of ways. But we must pay attention in here and out there. We must pay attention, even if it's painful. We must pay attention because that will be the only way we can begin to heal ourselves and this world. And so I ask us, brave moral cartographers, what does life intend to do with you? What horizon is not on your perfectly ordered map, but calls out to you with its faithful siren song? And how do you attend to it in small, human ways, each and every day? We need not be heroes or prophets or martyrs. We need only be Unitarian Universalists who dare to chart a course beyond our human understanding. And so, a blessing. May your course meander, but your destination be ever true. Amen. Our benediction today is from author and Unitarian Louisa May Alcott. May you carry these words into the coffee hour after this service, and also as you embark on the coming days and months, bringing attention to the wondrous horizon of possibility and change, as well as the stormy seas that may shake your ship. As Louisa May Alcott wrote, "I'm not afraid of storms. for I am learning to sail my ship. Go in peace. We love you, and amen.